Hey there! Welcome to the 12th episode of A Little Passionate. I am your host, Brittany, and on today's episode, I am going to be doing a little check-in and see how things are going with your goals and resolutions for 2024. And don't worry, I will not be leaving you hanging because I'm going to be sharing what's been going on in my journey as well. And then we are going to get to the big topic of today's episode, which is all about connection. It is going to be a really great episode, and I'm so glad that you are here. Hi. Well, I am so excited to kick off this episode by just simply checking in. I feel like as your bestie, I have to do my due diligence and check in to see how things are going with the goals or resolutions that you might have made for 2024. Maybe you decided to come up with a word for the year to focus on. Maybe you did set some goals and resolutions. So I just wanted to ask, how's it going? I also want to say, don't give up in your pursuit of those goals and the pursuit of just being diligent and living out your word that you have for the year or working towards those resolutions. And remember, consistency is key. Keep showing up, keep trying. And I promise you that you are going to be able to grow as a person and that you are going to feel so much better for it. So don't give up. We're a month in and you're starting out strong. And if you're not, it is totally okay. So here's where I'm at in my journey of just pursuing goals, resolutions, my word of the year. First thing, I have read one book. I have read The Inheritance Games. It is a great book. If you like mystery, this is the book for you. It is fun. It's lighthearted. And I really enjoyed it, but there's a lot of intrigue. There's puzzles. And I never really thought that I would be a person that just enjoyed mystery books, but this one has got me. It was really good. And it was like a page turner, man. I looked forward to reading this book. And I think I read it in like 3 or 4 days. I would have moved on to the second book, but I'm currently on hold with the library to be able to get it. So I'm looking forward to the next book in the series. Very excited about it. And I want to encourage you, if reading books is your goal this year, get a library card. It will change your life. I've been really enjoying having a library card. It's been awesome to be able to just check books out on my phone. That's where I primarily read books. I thought I would be a tablet girly, but I am not because it is chunky and not comfortable. So I like just cozying up and reading books on my phone. Highly recommend it. I still do like holding an actual book in my hands because there is power in the printed word. I would not be a journalist if I did not believe that, but I am thankful for the accessibility of just literature and news. And so, sorry, that's my little plug right there, so you understand where I'm coming from and my background, but definitely recommend reading The Inheritance Games. I'm also currently reading another book right now. I just started. I honestly don't even remember what it's called. It's been kind of hard to get into, so I'm going to keep going, giving it a try. And of course, I'm doing the Bible recap for the second year in a row, and it's going really well. I'm staying on track, and I really enjoyed reading the book of Job for the second time. I think it helped me see things from a different perspective than I did the first time I read it through. Not to say that was the first time I had ever read the book of Job, but what I've really enjoyed about the Bible recap is not only just the commentary that Tara Lee Cobble has, but also doing it with people. Me and my sister-in-law, we always check in with each other and we share the things that we're learning. And I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. And so if you have not checked out the Bible recap yet, it is not too late to get started. I promise you, you will grow so much in your relationship with the Lord. You will learn so much about His Word. And I promise you, if you are a person that has ever struggled with getting into the word, this is going to get you to a point where you will literally crave it. You will want to get into the word. And so I really encourage you to do it. I could not recommend it enough. The Bible recap is where it is at. And then the other thing that I have been working on is just minimizing my consumption of Dr. Pepper. I will always be a Dr. Pepper girl. It's just who I am. I've come to terms with it. Now, I'm trying to do better about not drinking as much. I have decided that I'm not completely cutting it out of my life because I would not be a nice person. But I have gotten to a point where I had only had it for like dessert or like with my dinner. So that's a win. And then I even got to the point where I was only having it like on the weekends. So recently I went to a women's retreat and I decided, you know what? This is like my vacation. So I am going to live it up. I'm going to treat myself because I've done so good and I'm going to drink Dr. Pepper. All right. So I will say this, I am proud of myself because I feel like like for me, I know what over the top is for me. And I didn't go over the top. Like I wasn't drinking it, you know, breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, dessert. Like I wasn't drinking that much Dr. Pepper. I felt like I did pretty good. And I know for sure, definitely, that like I was at the point where sometimes I wouldn't even drink it at night. I would just have it during the day or I'd flip it. And then I was also trying to drink as much water as I did Dr. Pepper to kind of help balance it out, make me feel healthier, you know? So I'm still on a journey with that. And I just want to encourage you, no matter where you're at and trying to pursue the things that you've set out to do for 2024. Just kudos to you. And I celebrate with you that you're even trying it all. Because some of these things they're hard. They're big things, but I feel like, it's worth it to give it a shot. And then I, of course, am still going to my dance class. It's been really fun. And I'm still working out and going to the gym. So, I'm also really working on looking for joy every day because, as you know from my podcast episode on setting realistic resolutions, I talked about setting a word for the year. And my word for 2024 is joy. So let me just tell you that I have plastered find joy or just the word joy on my phone, on the background of my computer. I made a bracelet that says joy. And funny enough, that was actually one of the words that we focused on at our retreat. And I just thought that was such like a cool like God wink for me and just really kind of helped me bring things into perspective. And another thing that I'm doing to help me to see joy, which is a choice. But I think what's helped me a lot in seeking after joy and looking for joy has been at the end of the day whenever I'm going to my journal and I am writing out, the things that I am grateful for, and then I'm spending some time in prayer. I'm also writing down the things that I found joy in that day, and they can be simple things, they can be big things, but what I'm learning is that if you go looking for something, you're going to find it. And joy is out there. It's just that I have to have my eyes open to it. And so, one of the things that I have personally been praying is that God would open up my ears to hear and that He would open up my heart to receive. Because a lot of times, we can just kind of get in the mully grubs and we get to a point like where we isolate and we don't even want to try anymore. We get to a point where, we don't want to look for the things anymore. If we just want to hide. And so I just want to encourage you, if you've gotten to a place where maybe things feel stagnant or it's hard to keep pursuing whatever your word of the year is, or maybe you just feel kind of lost or distracted, keep searching. Open up your eyes to see. I promise you that you are going to find exactly what you need. Um, that brings me to the topic that I really have felt heavy on my heart, especially coming off of this retreat, and that is connection. There is so much power in connection. And I thought it was really important to bring this topic up, especially as we are going into a month of, love for February. But really, my focus is the fact that some of us are really great at connecting with people. And then there's some of us who need encouragement. And, I think for me, I'm a person who I feel like whenever I'm in certain like vicinities, I do better. And we'll kind of get to that a little bit later in this episode, but I can't say that I always do a great job at connecting when it's one on one. I feel like I am decent, when it comes to connecting like from a stage whenever I'm preaching, or I feel like I'm in my element whenever I am recording content for my podcast and looking for ways to connect here. I feel like I do better, you know, kind of from a perspective of like public speaking or even maybe being in a group setting. And I really kind of struggle when it comes to one on one. But I think that, for me, what I'm realizing in this whole aspect of there being power and connection is really a focus on going back to really just basic things. I think sometimes we make connecting with people so much harder than it has to be. And so, those are just kind of some of the things that I wanted to touch on in this episode. And then I hope you will find encouragement in. Maybe there's some things that will challenge you to try out and methods of connecting with people. And this, even honestly, the things that I'm going to touch on could help you in connecting with God, could help you connecting with your family, connecting with your spouse, connecting with friends. And so I'm going to kind of hit on some things that even I learned this past weekend at my retreat that I went to, that just has really been hitting home for me. And really, I found that when it comes to connecting with others, there are just some simple things that make all the difference. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on is time and place. Okay, so really two things, but they work hand in hand. So, one of the things for me is that I can get so busy that I get tunnel vision. And so, especially whenever I'm in the zone at church doing like my job, as some would say, really for me, it's service. I am serving, I am worshiping. And so sometimes I can get to where I have tunnel vision in that, right? And that's something that was really brought to my attention this at this retreat. And so time and place are very important. And what I loved about our retreat that we hosted, our women's group hosted, um, was that this was a very like open-ended retreat that focused on three things. It focused on joy, which is my word of the year. It focused on connection and celebration. And I believe that something that was done very well was such a focus on connection. And I think that honestly, there were some intentional things that obviously were planned to make the connection happen. But what I loved is that even before the retreat, like quote unquote, started, when people were just gathering in and we were hanging out, like before we even like did our like devotional time or before we had supper, people were already connecting. Like they were already in the living room talking, they were already around the dinner table talking, and we had just an amazing place to connect. The house that we stayed in was incredible, and it had lots of space for us to be able to connect. There was a hot tub. So, of course, we hot tubbed. Of course, we were able to connect even there. We talked about just our backstories and like how we even got to be where we're at now in our walk with the Lord. If we grew up going to church, like just conversation came up organically. And then, like we got together around the dinner table and we would talk while we're eating supper, of course. And then just these are the organic moments while we're playing games or we're making friendship bracelets and all of these things. So the place was provided. And I actually went to a retreat like location, like a place separate from like our church or separate from like a women's retreat or anything like this. But this was like a getaway, like a place to go, like where you had no cell phone service. And it was literally designed for you to just find rest in God. And the entire like motto for this ministry was we provide the place and he provides the God. And so that's why I think time and place are so important when it comes to making connection a priority, but also like for us on the reciprocal, like if you're the one who is trying to connect with others, you also have to take into consideration the time and the place. And then also like for us, if you are a leader of any capacity, whether, you're a leader at church, you're a leader at the workplace, your eyes have to also be open and your ears have to be open to see that people are trying to connect with you. And one of the things that I'm constantly having to remind myself is that the things that I think are most important are not as important as I've made them to be. And I think that that is a challenge for all of us because I think at some point we can all get that tunnel vision, like I mentioned, where we've got the task at hand, we've got, whatever is on our schedule that we've got to do. We have our to do list that we have to cross off. And sometimes that means that our marriage is put on the back burner, or that means that our time with God is cut short. The time that we would normally spend in prayer or in the word is cut short because there's all these other things that we have to do. Dishes have to get done and laundry has to get put away. And it's like we just keep shoving all the other things to the bottom of our list. And often, like, that's where our relationships end up. And so I feel like a lot of people during various times in their life feel alone. And I think I'm in a place now where I really am looking at my relationships, at my friendships, in my marriage, in my family, and I'm looking at how I spend my time, the ways that I make the effort at connecting. And I will be the first to raise my hand and say that I am not the best at it, but it is something that I see that I've got to get better at because connection is crucial. Connection is vital to us surviving and that we were made to connect. And that's my other point. Simple things that make all the difference is recognizing that we were literally created to connect and that we were not made to do life alone. That is the entire reason why when God created Adam, he made Eve for him to be a helpmate, to be someone who complements him. And I love that because as we connect with people, we're going to find people who complement us where in areas that I lack, someone else is strong. In areas where someone else may be lacking, I can be the strength for them. But we will never know if we continue to isolate ourselves because we just make up excuses. And so I just want to encourage you that you are made to connect, but there's a time and there's a place for connection. And also, we have to make it a priority to connect. And I think that oftentimes we just simply don't, or we think that it's enough to just pass somebody and smile and wave and be on our way. Especially with technology, I feel like we have gotten to a place where we don't really know people the way that we used to know people, or maybe even the methods that we use to be able to get to know people have changed. I remember whenever I was in school, and one of the like primary methods of connecting with people was, well, of course, like at a lunch table, but also writing notes. And I remember writing all of these notes and just being so like intentional with sharing what's going on in my life with people, with sharing Christ with people through writing them notes, and we, pass them out, and we would be so careful with how the notes were folded. And even whenever I had when I was going to church camps, to Winterfest, that was one of the primary ways that like I really poured into my friendship with my best friend. We lived hours away from each other. Of course we had cell phones, so we would text, we talk on the phone, but back in the day it wasn't unlimited texting, and it wasn't unlimited minutes, which can you even imagine? But one of the ways that we just really like to be intentional was we would create this box, we would decorate it. So I had a box for her, she had a box for me, and all year we would write letters, just whatever we were feeling in the moment, like just all the things. And then we would pass them off to each other, and I'd give her her box and she would give me mine. And to this day, I still have them. And I remember just going home so excited to read these things. And even though there was some stuff, of course, that we would talk about over the phone, it was just nice to see it from a different perspective. But I think that we have lost the art of communication because Facebook, Instagram, we don't even really remember people's birthdays anymore, which is sad. We don't really have to remember people's phone numbers anymore because we have a contact list. Like all these things where we used to be so intentional about, or maybe we would send birthday cards to people. It's just not anything that we do anymore. And I'm not going to say that technology is bad, obviously, because you're here listening to my podcast. So technology is definitely a great thing. But I just want to kind of remind you about the art of communication and intentionality. So maybe we should take the same concept of, you know, writing these letters and being intentional with every word and really caring about, how we even folded up the letters. So, how can we bring that into our communication in a modern day? And I think that that comes down to like taking the time to call somebody and check in, or sending a thoughtful text and really thinking about like not just the cookie cutter, like, how are you doing? And that was one of the things that really challenged me at our retreat was um our women's ministry leader, my sister-in-law. She really challenged us because she had us question like how we are communicating, how we're connecting. So she said, so instead of asking how are you, what if you asked how can I serve you? And that just really got to me, and it really spoke to me because it's so true. And a lot of times, even I look back whenever I've asked somebody, how are you? And I had the best intentions, but I would always get so kind of like frustrated by their response because I felt like it wasn't genuine. Because what are most people going to say whenever you ask how they're doing? They're going to say, I'm good. And that's about it. Or I'm fine. How are you? And it really just kind of stops there. The conversation doesn't continue past that, right? So she really had us question like, when we're trying to connect with people, what are we asking? So instead of how are you, how can I serve you? Or how can I pray for you? And that's something I kind of want to preface like as we go into February. That question of how can I serve you is going to come back up because I think it's so important because Jesus, he came to serve. Literally his entire ministry was based around the concept of serving. And I think it's so beautiful. And if we are to live a life like Christ, if we are made in God's image, then we too are created to serve. And it's not about ourselves and what we can get out of it, but it is about being who we are made to do, like made to be, and doing what we are made to do. And that is to serve others, to meet them where they are. And that's what connection is, it's meeting people where they are. And one of the things that we did that I really enjoyed was it was like speed dating, but we called it speed friending. And so we sat across from a person and we had 2 minutes to answer a question. And this to me was just so awesome because I got to talk to all the ladies that were there at this retreat. So there were 17 of us, and every person, got to weigh in on different questions. And it just the questions were fun and engaging. And it really made me think about whenever I'm communicating to people, what kind of questions am I asking? Like just said earlier, it went beyond the simple, like, how are you? We talked about the things that we're passionate about. And so hopefully, after listening to a few episodes of this podcast, you've been able to maybe think of some things that you're passionate about. And if you have not yet figured it out, I promise you, if you go looking for it, you're going to find something to be passionate about, right? So we talked about that. We talked about if we could go out to eat with a celebrity, who would it be? Non Sunday school answers. So sorry if your answer would be Jesus, which would be cool. But that was a fun question. Or, if you could travel anywhere, where would you travel? And what's so neat about that is, you start to find commonalities with people that you wouldn't find any other time because we're not asking the questions because we are busy people. And I think that's really what it comes down to is our priority. So, are we prioritizing our schedule or are we prioritizing people? And if we want to have better relationships, if we want to have like thriving friendships, it comes down to what are we pouring in? And I will tell you this, I learned so much in just 2 simple minutes about people and the things that they loved, the things that they needed to work on, things that they were excited about. And it was so fun to just see people come alive. And that truly is my heart, is that I hope that whenever you hear this podcast, that something in you comes alive, that excites you, that makes you want to get out of bed and try something new, that makes you want to grow as a person, to learn something, to cultivate something. That's what this is all about. And so that's what it comes down to. In these 2 minutes, I learned so much about these people that I have known for years, that I sit by at church, that I serve with in church. Because honestly, I have not given them as much time that they deserve. And I think that we can all say that when it comes down to our families, to our marriage, to our coworkers. And so I hope that this challenges you to ask the question. Even in my dance class, one of the things that is really important to them is developing a sense of community because they want us to feel confident in the space that we are dancing in. And how do you grow in confidence? Community, knowing that you are supported. So just this past week, I went to my dance class, and every dance class, they start with a community question. And they're usually like really fun questions. And one of the questions that was asked was if you could have like any exotic animal as a pet, what would it be and what would you name it? And I thought that was so fun. Whenever I did a dance to a song from the Barbie movie, one of the questions was if you could be any Barbie, which Barbie would you be? Just simple things like that. And so I hope this helps you to dig a little bit deeper whenever you are connecting with people, to ask the questions. They don't always have to be the uncomfortable questions, though sometimes those need to be asked. But it can just be fun questions, just trying to get to know people. And it's funny because you would think that for me as a journalist that I would have those questions off the top of my head to ask, but I don't. I'm a person that really has to think of these things through, but I loved this retreat so much because for the first time in a long time, like I just was in a position to be able to connect. And I think it's because it was a right time, it was a right place, and we were really given the tools to be able to connect with each other. We were given activities to do. We did a scavenger hunt in Branson, and it was so much fun. And I loved it because people that wouldn't normally be together were together, and it was so fun. um we absolutely loved it. It was a blast. And so again, it's time and its place, finding commonality. And then I also want to challenge you to put the phone down and be present, because I think that's what's missing in our connection with each other. And I think obviously that we are all guilty of it because it is easier to just scroll than to connect. right? Because if we connect, and that means that the mask has to come off and we have to be real, right? And we live in a culture that just wants to slap a filter on everything, and we don't want to have to show our real selves, because if we show our real selves, then we're vulnerable to criticism. We're vulnerable to people disagreeing with us. We're vulnerable to the thoughts and opinions of everybody else. And that can be scary sometimes, but I want to encourage you to be yourself, to show up, to be real, to put your phone down, be present for your spouse, be present for your kids, be present for your friends, be present for your family. It is so important. And I will tell you this, like at this retreat, the only time I picked up my phone was to take pictures of what was going on, because I wanted to be able to capture the story of what took place, because it was so beautiful. And I was looking back at the pictures of this, and it just was so encouraging to me, because I would just see just ladies of all walks of life, women who have been on a journey, and I saw them connect, and I saw life and joy. I saw connection. I saw celebration on their faces. We had powerful time of prayer, and that happened because of the connection that we experience together. And so I just want to encourage you, if there is something lacking in your life, look at your connections. Start from there. Ask yourself, like, have I been present? I think sometimes too, spiritually, when we get to a place where we call it a dry season, and I'm not negating that dry seasons happen, because they do, but oftentimes we blame it on everything else without asking ourselves, have I been present? Have I been in the word? Have I been meeting with God? Have I been getting in his presence? Have I been pursuing him? Because chances are, if you're in a dry season, you're lacking somewhere. Are you present? Simply. If you're finding yourself in a dry spell in your marriage, and just connection with your friendships, with your family, ask yourself, have I been present? Have I been checking in? Have I been asking the questions? It's so important, because we were not made to do life alone. And then the other thing I want to talk about is connecting over shared interests, over passions and experiences, which is something I kind of touched on a little bit ago. But what I found, especially at this retreat, and I keep going back to it because it just highlighted so many things to me. And I had already had this idea for this episode, but everything just started popping off, like, okay, God, I see you. Like, you're giving me the content that is much needed for this episode. Um and really, this truly goes back to the heart of this podcast, is I believe that whenever we are able to do things together, like playing a board game together, like knitting or crocheting together, whenever we are able to share an experience, whenever we're able to share an interest, whenever we're able to share in the things that we are passionate about, like going to concerts, or, playing video games, or, whatever the case may be. Maybe you're really into music too. Maybe you're a movie buff, whatever it is, when you can find somebody else to do it, man, there is nothing like it. There is no substitution for human connection. There truly isn't, because it's who and what we're made to do, is to connect with each other. This is why God made us, and why he saw that his creation was good, is because of the connections that were made. And that's why I think it's so beautiful whenever I see people connect over things that they're interested in. At this retreat, I saw young and old connecting over puzzles, a shared interest. I saw young and old connecting over a scavenger hunt. I saw young and old connecting, making friendship bracelets, talking about all kinds of things that they're experiencing in their life. And it was so beautiful. I saw women in different walks of life just showing up for one another and hearing each other out and doing things that they enjoyed together. And so, yeah, put yourself out there. Find a shared interest with someone. And maybe, even if it's something that your friend or your spouse like hasn't really been into, if you bring them into it, you may find that that passion is going to grow. There's things that um I have come to enjoy that I didn't think that I would. But over time and as I have come alongside people, I have found that I've enjoyed it. And so you never know if you don't try. And so I just want to encourage you that if you have a hobby that you enjoy doing, try bringing someone else into it and doing it together. Find that commonality, show up for each other, and then try something with them, try a new hobby with them, and vice versa. Like, just show up, connect with each other over those shared interests, over the things that you're passionate about, over shared experience. A lot of times I have heard people say, well, I am really passionate about just, you know, being a mom, or I'm really passionate about my job, the work that I do. And those things are great. I'll be honest with you, I am very passionate about being an aunt. But I know that that's not all that I have to offer. I know that that is not my identity. It's a part of my identity, but it's not the only part of my identity. And so, if that's you, if you find yourself and you're like, hey, I have no clue what I'm passionate about, all I know is my job, or all I know is to be a mom, and I'm just trying to be the best mom I can be. Like me, I'm trying to be the best aunt ever, and sometimes I'm really good at that, and sometimes I can do a lot better at that. But I just want to encourage you to find something, to partner along your spouse, to partner along a friend, and join them in the things that you're passionate about, because you might just find that you are passionate about it too. And then lastly, another simple thing that makes all the difference is simply to celebrate one another. And I think that that's something that we don't do enough of. And I was thinking of this because when I was at my dance class, one of the things that they do really well is that when they split us up into groups, and group one is dancing and group two is dancing, we cheer for each other. And I don't know these people, but man, I am letting them know that they are killing it. And so sometimes I think that we focus a lot on ways that we think that people can do better instead of celebrating them where they're at, celebrating how far they have come. And so I just want to encourage you to celebrate the wins, whether they're small, whether they're great accomplishments. Show up and celebrate one another. And honestly, for me, there is nothing more beautiful to me, especially seeing women celebrate women, because we can get really catty, and we can be really catty, and we compare each other to one another a lot. We compare ourselves to other people. And so for me, if we can look at people and see, wow, like they are working hard, to accomplish this, or they're doing a really great job. Honestly, even if it's a stranger that you see at a grocery store and they are just handling things with poise, celebrate that. Call them out on it. I promise you that you are going to make their day if you just simply smile. You let them know, like, hey, I see you. Cashier, you are doing a fantastic job handling people today, okay? Let's celebrate one another, because the world is full of division, it is full of chaos, and we don't need to add to it. We are the ones, especially as Christians, who should be loving people, who should be celebrating people, who should be honoring people and lifting them up and speaking life instead of death. And so I just want to encourage you with those things as we go into a beautiful month, a month of love in February. I want to challenge you and encourage you to do all that you can to connect with people. Remember, it's all about time and place, and we need to make space for it, right? We need to make space for connection in our homes, in our workplaces, in our churches, in all that we do. It's all about time and place, making connection a priority. Remember that we are made to connect, and life is truly better together. We were not made to do life alone. Also, remember, instead of just asking, "How are you?" a better question may be, "How can I serve you?" Or "How can I pray for you?" Or maybe just even asking a fun question about life in general and just see where it goes from there. Put the phone down, be present, show up for people, be your authentic self, include people into the things that you're passionate about, into your shared interests, into your experience. And maybe in doing that, you're going to be able to help someone else find something that they can be passionate about too. And also make yourself available to reciprocate that for the other person. And then do not forget to celebrate each other. I really hope that this episode has encouraged you, challenged you a little bit, to just make connection more a part of your life. It's easy to hide behind a keyboard. It's easy to just wave hi and move along. But there is so much power in connecting with people and being a part of their story and giving them space to share that story with you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of A Little Passionate. I hope that you have left feeling encouraged, challenged, and inspired to connect with others, because I have found that the more that we connect with others, the more that we can find things to be a little passionate about too. So if you enjoyed this episode, it would be amazing if you would share it with a friend, with a family member, share it on your socials, because this message is so important. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to my podcast, A Little Passionate, by hitting the follow button so you don't miss out on the next episode. Thank you so much.